Today's video is sponsored by Keeps. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I wear a lot of hats. In fact, I don't think that I've actually ever appeared on this channel without one. Now, if you're wondering why that is, the answer is actually really simple. I have a third eye. Just kidding. The reason is, of course, hair loss. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? The best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. I wish I would have taken action earlier about my hair loss, but I am glad that I am now taking action with Keeps. Keeps treatments typically take between 4 to 6 months to start seeing results, so it's important to act fast. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you can save. Keeps offers generic versions of the FDA-approved medications for hair loss, which makes it more affordable. And as you know, this channel is all about commanding your budget. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/commanders or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/commanders. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So it's just past lunchtime, well, at least for me, and I'm already on to episode number 3. So yeah, there are some really exciting things coming out already in Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Now, if you weren't up at the crack of dawn like I was, make sure you check out my episode from this morning on Daybound, Nightbound, the new mechanic that's been revealed. I go through it in detail there. Also in that episode, I tackled 2 new exciting cards with Arlen and Seraph. And also from this morning, I had another episode on Enduring Angel, which is an angel that can, well, help you never lose. And believe me, plenty of shenanigans can be had with this angel in play. But to me, the most exciting spoiler from today has got to be Tovolar Dire Overlord. As you can see from the thumbnail and the title, the word finally is there because, yeah, I and many others out there have been waiting for this kind of a commander for quite some time. So what does this overdue commander, well, do? Let's jump into it to find out. Quite a long time ago, I did an episode with Princess where we talked about the tribes that need more love from wizards. And one of the main tribes that I highlighted in that episode is werewolves. I and many other commander players out there have been waiting for a werewolf commander for a long time. I mean, we've been to Innistrad how many times now? And the best werewolf commander that we ever got was Ulrich of the Crawling Horde. Yeah, this thing is terrible. Oh, okay, it's not a terrible creature, but it is a terrible werewolf commander. Sorry, Ulrich of the Crown Horde / Ulrich Uncontested Alpha. You are very much contested now for the alpha spot for Werewolf because it is my pleasure to introduce you to the new head of basically every Werewolf Commander tribal deck out there with Tovolar Dire Overlord. And believe me, this is what Werewolf fans have been waiting for and then some. Tovolar is a 3/3 human werewolf for 1 red-green. He has, whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So yeah, tribal coastal piracy / reconnaissance mission on a werewolf tribal commander. Yeah, sign me up. That's already leagues better than Ulrich. Sorry, Ulrich. But of course, that's not all. Tovolar also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control. So Tovolar essentially says, hey, as long as you've got enough wolves or werewolves, I'm making it night and we're transforming right now. I don't care about any spell casting requirements or whatnot. We are just making it night right now. That is a massive effect that can turn your entire team into an even deadlier force in the blink of an eye. And of course, Tovolar has Daybound with the whole Daybound and Nightbound mechanic. And actually, okay, really quick, let's just go over that right now. Basically, with day, if it becomes day or night, or if a Daybound permanent enters the battlefield, we start tracking day and night for the rest of the game. So again, Tovolar has Daybound. As it becomes day, we transform all Nightbound permanents so they'd go to their day side. And then if a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. And then night says, as it becomes night, transform all Daybound permanents, so then they become their night side. Permanents then enter the battlefield Nightbound, and if a player casts at least 2 spells during their own turn, it becomes day next turn. So again, Tovolar's trigger says, hey, if you've got enough wolves and werewolves in play, you don't need to not cast a spell this turn, let's just make it night right now. So that when it becomes night, you transform any number of human werewolves you control, and on top of that, your permanents are now going to enter the battlefield Nightbound. So yeah, that's pretty huge. But of course, this is only half the card, and yeah, the other side does not disappoint either. Tovolar Dire Overlord transforms into Tovolar the Midnight Scourge. It says whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, so that part didn't change at all. On top of that, by paying X, red, green, target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. And if that ability sounds familiar to you, well, in the original Innistrad, we had Kessig Wolf Run. It's a land that has pay X, red, green, and tap. Target creature gets +X/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. And keep in mind that on Tovolar the Midnight Scourge, you don't have to tap it to do that. So yeah, dump a ton of mana into this, get some damage through on multiple creatures, or, you know, just pump your commander and hit for a ton of commander damage as well. So yeah, this Werewolf Tribal Commander provides us an absurd amount of card advantage. It can essentially auto-flip our human werewolves into werewolves, and then it also can pump them too. So yeah, I would say this is the Werewolf Tribal Commander that many players have been waiting for. But now that we've talked about Tovolar, let's talk about what cards you'd want to utilize if you're building a commander deck around him. First up, this deck wants to be very aggressive in attack and get damage through on players to generate card advantage. So anthems such as Full Moon's Rise, Howlpack Resurgence, and Nightpack Ambusher can really help. Full Moon's Rise says werewolf creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. And by sacrificing Full Moon's Rise, we can regenerate all werewolf creatures we control. So if we need this as a panic button, it's a great way to save our werewolves. But if not, again, pumping our team and giving them trample is a fantastic way to get damage through, which we can also do thanks to Howlpack Resurgence. It's an enchantment with flash that says each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf gets +1/+1 and has trample. So this surprise tribal anthem pump effect can be really effective. And speaking of surprises, Nightpack Ambusher has flash, and other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. On top of that, at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell this turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So if we don't happen to cast a spell on our turn, we actually get an extra benefit as well, on top of, you know, that fantastic anthem. And speaking of anthems, we even have some human werewolves themselves that can help us out too, with Breakneck Rider, Instigator Gang, and Mayor of Avabrook. The human sides, well, don't do all that much. But again, our commander can help them easily transform into werewolves, and on that side, they pack quite a punch. They transform into Neckbreaker, Wild Blood Pack, and Howlpack Alpha. Neckbreaker is going to give attacking creatures we control +1/+0 and trample. And again, trample is huge for this deck to help us get damage through to draw more cards. And then Wild Blood Pack already has trample, and it says attacking creatures you control get +3/+0. That is a huge pump effect that can help us get a ton of damage in. And then Howlpack Alpha has other werewolf and wolf creatures you control get +1/+1. On top of that, at the beginning of your end step, you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. So this can pump our team and help us fill the board as well. Outside of these werewolves though, of course there are plenty of pump effects that can really help us out though, and one of the best ones out there has got to be Berserker's Onslaught. Berserker's Onslaught gives all of our attacking creatures double strike. This does a lot for us. First off, our werewolves are essentially going to be hitting twice as hard. They get to hit first in combat, so they're more protected as well. But most importantly, when they hit a player, we're essentially generating twice as much card advantage. Because again, with double strike, they'd hit that player, draw a card, hit that player again, draw another card. So with every werewolf that gets through, we basically now draw 2 cards, and yeah, that's pretty absurd. And speaking of absurd, let's talk about Relentless Assault. Relentless Assault says, untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there shall combat phase followed by additional main phase. Basically, you get an extra combat. And again, with an extra combat, there's going to be more damage and more cards drawn. So yeah, definitely make sure that you're considering cards that give double strike and ones that give you extra combat steps. Also, make sure that you consider cards that can help you build your army, like Cult of the Waxing Moon and Silverfur Partisan. Cult of the Waxing Moon says, whenever a permanent you control transforms into a non-human creature, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Basically, when your human werewolves become just werewolves, congratulations, here's a ton of wolves. yeah, you can flood the board in pretty much no time with this. And then Silver for Partisan says, whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. So if you're targeting your own things with spells, congratulations, you get more werewolves. Or it's just a nice additional value if an opponent tries to kill one of your things, well, you get something in return. Next up, another way to make some wolf tokens, although it's a pretty expensive way, is Huntmaster of the Fells. This card is about $10 right now, and I'm sure that price is only going to go up with this commander being spoiled. Regardless, it says whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Huntmaster of the Fells, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield and you gain 2 life. So this actually has a transform trigger, which is obviously fantastic with this commander. And then Mondronin Shaman, well, okay, this side doesn't do anything, but I promise the other side is relevant to this conversation, so let's get on to that. Anyways, these turn into Ravager of the Fells and Tovolar's Mage Hunter. Ravager of the Fells has, whenever this creature transforms into Ravager of the Fells, it deals 2 damage to target opponent and 2 damage up to 1 target creature that player controls. So this is a nice little pinging effect every time it transforms into this. And speaking of maybe a not so little pinging effect, let's move on to the other card. It says whenever an opponent casts a spell, Tovolar's Mage Hunter deals 2 damage to that player. So now your opponents are punished for just casting spells, so have fun with that. But we also have some other werewolves that can help throw a wrench into our opponent's plans with things like Afflicted Deserter, Daybreak Ranger, and Hermit of the Natternolls. Now, the human sides of these aren't all that terrible, well, except for Afflicted Deserter, which does nothing, but Daybreak Ranger can tap to ping a flyer for 2, and Hermit of the that's a hard name to say, Natternolls, says whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw a card. Regardless, of course, the werewolf sides are better. Werewolf Ransacker has, whenever this creature transforms into Werewolf Ransacker, you may destroy target artifact. If that artifact is put into a graveyard this way, Werewolf Ransacker deals 3 damage to the artifact's controller. And with Nightfall Predator, we can pay a red and tap it to make it fight target creature. Lastly, Lone Wolf of the Natternolls, got it right this time, says whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw 2 cards. That's a lot of additional free card advantage if an opponent decides to cast a spell on our turn. And we even have some werewolves that can help us in the ramp department with Scorn Villager and Duskwatch Recruiter. Scorn Villager can tap for a green, and Duskwatch Recruiter has pay 2 and a green to look at the top 3 cards of our library. We can get a creature card out of them into our hand. Regardless, when they transform, they can be even more impactful. Scorn Villager transforms into Moonscarred Werewolf. It has Vigilance and tap, add green to your mana pool. And then Krowlin Horde Howler has creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Obviously, this deck is going to be running a ton of creatures, so yeah, you're going to be saving a lot of mana with this. And of course, we even have some heavy-hitting werewolves with things like Crew and Outlaw and Sage of Ancient Lore. Crew and Outlaw just starts off with First Strike, and Sage of Ancient Lore says its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. But then these cards transform into Terror of Crew and Pass and Werewolf of Ancient Hunger. Terror of Crew and Pass has double strike, and each werewolf you control can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Or in other words, werewolves you control have menace. So this can hit very hard. Again, double strike, again like I mentioned earlier, is fantastic for card advantage in this deck. And then target this with your commander to give it trample and pump it quite a bit, and you're going to be hitting impossibly hard with this. On top of that, all of your werewolves now have menace, and they are very, very hard to block. And speaking of hard to block, there's Werewolf of Ancient Hunger. It's a star with Vigilance and Trample, and its power and toughness are each equal to the total number of cards in all players' hands. So that's everyone's hand, including your own, and again, with this deck, we're going to be drawing a ton of cards, so have fun hitting your opponents for a ton with this. But there is one final note that I need to discuss that was in an article that Wizards just released. In the section of this article, they say transforming. This is the good part. But is it? It says, as it becomes day, all double-face cards with Nightbound transform to their Daybound faces. As it becomes night, all double-face cards with Daybound transform into their Nightbound faces. We already knew that. In other words, these double-face cards should always be in sync no matter who controls them. What's more, permanents with Daybound and Nightbound can't transform any other way. Sorry, Moonmist fans, the bound part of Daybound and Nightbound is serious. So, this is kind of, well, unexpected, I would say, and also not intuitive, and, well, let's just take a look at Moonmist and you'll see why. Moonmist is an instant for 1 and a green, and it says, transform all humans, prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn by creatures other than werewolves and wolves. Obviously, at first glance, this would seem like a shoo-in for this deck. But again, like they mentioned in that article, apparently the phrase transform all humans doesn't work if it's a Daybound human. For whatever reason. I mean, again, I understand the thought behind it, but to me, that makes pretty much no sense to just completely ignore the phrase transform all humans, and it's confusing, and it's not intuitive at all. Now, another card that, again, was going to be a shoo-in for this deck, and probably still would be, but is definitely going to need a ruling on here in a bit, is Immerwolf. Immerwolf is a 2/2 wolf with Intimidate that says other wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1, so that's a nice anthem, but the reason this is so effective is non-human werewolves you control can't transform. Basically, your werewolves can no longer turn back into humans. Now, from what I saw, Immerwolf was not mentioned in this article, and I haven't seen any official ruling on it yet. And again, I'm no rules lawyer, so I really don't know what direction that's going to go. I always assume that can't is greater than can, so Immerwolf would actually win out in this one. So my thought is that with this in play, even if it goes from night to day, your werewolves wouldn't transform because this says they can't. Again, I could be wrong, and there can be some wonky ruling coming out here in a bit, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on this. Regardless, aside from these weird rulings, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on this commander. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this is most definitely the werewolf commander that many werewolf tribal fans out there have been waiting for quite some time. Tovolar can provide you an absurd amount of card advantage, it can transform your werewolves for you, and it can even pump them too. So yeah, what's not to love about this commander if you're looking to build a werewolf tribal deck? And with that, the show's come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.